executive pet center. And they charge me $34 to take my dog on a walk, feed my dog, give my dog its... I pay $4 or $5 more a day to take care of my dog than what we're paying people in Miami to take care of persons with serious mental illness. Now, I know you guys in the Garden State think you live in heaven, but I'm sorry, I'm going to set you straight. I live in heaven, and I'm going to prove it to you. The average household income in America today is $46,000. In Fairfax County, the suburb where I live, the average household income is $152,000. And that's because most people work for the federal government, so thank you for your tax dollars, all right? You would think at that kind of money, wow, those people got to have great mental health. Do you know, right now in Fairfax County, if you have a mental breakdown, there's a 2-week wait to see a therapist, there's a 6-month wait to have a case manager, and there is an 18-year wait to get into any kind of supportive housing. 18 years. It's no wonder I call my book crazy. I'm not talking about our people like my son. I'm talking about our system. So, what are we doing about it? Well, the mental health system is failing us without its money and support, so we're turning on the criminal justice system to save us. All across the nation, progressive communities, including New Jersey, are setting up crisis intervention team training for law enforcement, since they are the ones who encounter persons with mental illness. They're setting up jail diversion programs. They're setting up mental health courts, and those are fabulous. They'll save money. They're great, but there's a lesson we should have learned with deinstitutionalization we've seemed to have forgotten. You can have the best CIT, best mental health, best reentry programs, but if you don't have anywhere to divert people to, you're going to fail. We need to wake up and realize that the best way to keep this from being a criminal justice problem is by dealing with people before they get entangled in the system. Let's use a little common sense. If I broke my leg, I wouldn't call up the police department and ask them to come set it. If I needed heart surgery, I wouldn't call up your sheriff and say, hey, can you come over and do a little heart surgery? And if I had nasty hemorrhoids, I wouldn't call up your judge and say, hey, judge, can you come over and take a look? So why are we expecting the police and the sheriff and the judges to solve what should be a community problem? So how do we solve this problem? After traveling to 48 states, visiting more than 100 treatment programs, touring dozens of jails, I'm here to tell you that the foundation, the absolute essential necessity when it comes to fixing our broken mental health system is housing. It is the bedrock of recovery if you have a serious and persistent mental illness. How can you recover if you're sleeping under a bridge and have a co-occurring disorder? How can you get better if there's no safe place? This is why housing first is so vital to recovery. And I've been told your state is a national leader in the housing first model. I just told you the national recidivism rate is 85%. Do you know at the LAMP project in LA, people who are frequent users, been on the streets for years, housing first, and an assertive community treatment team, 80% recovery rate. So what do you want to do? Do you want to spend 85% and get nothing, or 80% and actually help people? It's not difficult. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Our affordable housing goes beyond just getting people in housing. It affects the entire mental health. Let me give you an example. Just 2 months ago, a young man, mental illness, Portsmouth, Virginia, goes in a convenience store. He steals $5 worth of food. He gets arrested. He's taken to the jail. The judge says, oh, you're not competent. You're going to have to wait to be made competent. There's no room in the state hospital. He waits 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. He loses 60 pounds. He becomes belligerent. 4 months. He's found dead in his cell from malnutrition and lack of water. Now, everybody goes, oh, that state hospital, they should have taken him in. The state hospital that same day had 60 people in it who were waiting to be discharged, but they couldn't be discharged because there was no supportive housing in all of Virginia who could take them in. And that's how housing affects the entire system. And that's why I believe that housing is a foundation of recovery. Is it all we need? Of course not. Moving someone off the street who has no friends and is isolated in a room really doesn't help them get better. We need to wake up and understand, along with housing, you need wraparound services. If you want to fix the mental health system in this country, you got to talk about jobs. If you want to fix it, you got to talk about transportation. If you want to fix it, you got to talk about veterans. If you want to fix it, you got to talk about drug and co-occurring problems. If you want to fix it, you got to talk about keeping families together. You can't solve this problem also unless you talk about hope. Writer Hal Lindsey said it best. Man can live without 40 days without food, 3 days without water, 8 minutes without air, and only 1 second without hope. You know, people say to me, oh, these folks are schizophrenic. It's so sad. You really can't help those people. And I always reply with one word, bull. And I cut that short for you, cleaned it up. People get better. I could tell you about countless individuals I've met as a board member for the Corporation of Supportive Housing and our returning home initiatives, our frequent users, services enhancement programs. I could tell you about a great program right here in New Jersey, Corporation of Supportive Housing, keeping families together. But this afternoon, I'm going to tell you about my son. For 2 years, he was on probation. He did great. He took his medication, which absolutely helped him. He was doing fine. As soon as that probation ended, he stopped taking his pills. I could see he was slipping. I called up our mobile crisis response team. I said, listen, my son's off his medication. You need to come talk to him. Whoa, is your son dangerous? No, he's not dangerous, but this is what happened last night. No, you can't judge him on what happened last time. That's not fair. You call us if he becomes dangerous. Well, the night I didn't have to lie, the night my son became violent, I called that same dispatcher. I said, please come. My son is violent. And he said, oh, wait a minute. Is your son dangerous or is he violent? And I said, he's violent. Oh, we don't come if they're violent. You need to call the police. Well, I called the police and they came and they shot my son twice with a taser and hogtied him and took him off. Now, there's a reason I'm telling you that story. If I couldn't get my son help after writing a book about it, my connections with Mike Wallace, living in fancy-dancy Fairfax County, what chance does someone who is in your community, who doesn't speak the language, who's homeless, who has no connections? Well, my son was hospitalized, he got better, then of course he stopped taking his medications. This time it was on Thanksgiving Day. He knew I could tell. He was afraid I was going to call the police. So he jumped in his car. He took off. I started calling him. He finally answered. I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to heaven, which wasn't exactly reassuring to me. And he hung up. Well, 4 hours later, I got a call. He said, I'm in North Carolina. Well, I guess you're a Tar Heel. That's heaven. But anyway, I ran out of gas. I said, I'll come get you. No, don't come. We'll go get some gas. I'll pay for it. No, you don't understand, Dad. You don't understand. The voices are telling me if I step out of this car, I'm going to die. Now, you know that's ridiculous, but I'm going to tell you something. How do you know you're listening to me? How do you know you're at a housing conference? Your brain is telling you that, and if your brain's telling you that you're going to die, if we walked out of this room, we'd all get to be really good friends. So I did what no father should do. I arranged for him to get gasoline, and he drove up psychotic on 95, went off the road twice. Luckily, didn't hit anybody, didn't get picked up by the police. I said, okay, I want to be your partner. What do you want to do? I'm not going to argue with you. I want to go to the safe house. I don't want to take pills. I just want to go to the safe house and think. I said, fine. I took him to the safe house, checked him in, went home. He got up in the middle of the night, took off all his clothes, because you know if you take off your clothes, you're invisible. And he walked outside. But listen to what happened to him this time. A CIT trained officer picked him up and said, I'm going to take you to an emergency room. He said, don't handcuff me. That's when I got tasered. I didn't break the law. He said, I'll use my discretion. Puts him in the back seat of the car, drives him there. And when that doctor said, well, being naked isn't dangerous, he said, oh, really, Dr. Smith? I'm going to look up your address and drop him off on your front lawn. All of a sudden, my son was admitted in that hospital. Then he got a case manager, and he said, why don't you take your pills? Well, I've gained 60 pounds. I can't drink. I can't do anything. I feel like a slug. We're going to work with the doctor to get you better medication. You know, my son's 7 psychiatrists, only 2 have bothered to learn his name and his symptoms, and that's because they're told they're only going to get paid for 15 minutes of a med check, and that's all they have to worry about. But treating the mind also requires treating the heart. And then she went to my son and she said, listen, I don't think living with your father is really good for your mental health. Well, I don't know how to take that, but she said, I'm going to find a place for you to move into. So my son moved into supportive housing. He moved into an apartment with 2 guys with schizophrenia, and I learned an important lesson. You know, my son had a room at my house where he could always live, but being on his own in his own apartment made him feel like he was accomplishing something. He paid 30% of the income he had. He sought a team. He started getting better. And the case manager said, what do you want to do with your life? Well, I can't do anything. I have a mental illness. Knock it off. Control the illness. Don't let it control you. I'd like to help people. I got the perfect program. It's called peer-to-peer. My son went through peer-to-peer training. Today, my son works for Fairfax County on a jail diversion team as a peer-to-peer specialist. Let me brag on him. Just a few months ago, guy over 300 pounds, schizophrenia, hadn't been out of his parents' apartment for months. My son got to know him. They went out, got him to McDonald's, not the best choice, went to McDonald's. Now that's no big deal unless that's your son. Today, my son's been stable for more than 6 years. He lives in his own apartment. He pays taxes. He works 2 jobs. So don't tell me recovery isn't possible. I've seen it with my own eyes. What can you do? What can you do? Recognize that you are not widget makers. You have chosen a profession that is a higher calling. You are housing advocates. You are fighting to give people a basic necessity that will enable them to move forward in their lives. What you do matters. Remember what Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I believe that every moment creates an opportunity for us to fix our broken system. Let me repeat that. Every moment creates an opportunity for us to fix our broken system. Make today your moment. You know, I got to give you a warning because I'm from Washington. I'm about to tell a religious story. I'm not pro-religion. I'm not anti-religion. I just like the moral implications of the story, and I want to share it with you. I grew up in Oklahoma. My dad was a minister, and what that means is I got dragged to church every Wednesday and every Sunday, and I got real good at sitting there like, and never hearing a word my dad said. But there's always one story that snapped me right to attention because it's about a woman who was having sex, okay? They're in the Bible. You just got to know where to look, all right? A woman's caught in adultery. Notice in the Bible, it's always women who are caught in adultery. They bring her to the center of town. They're going to stone her. They're picking up rocks. They're going to kill her because of this horrible thing that she has done. And we read that the teacher picks up a rock and says, let ye who's never sinned cast the first stone. And we read that people drop those rocks. They put them down because they all know all of us have sinned. All of us are not pure. Well, sadly, we live in a world today where people don't put down those rocks. They're eager to throw those stones. They want people with mental illnesses, with co-occurring problems, people who have been in jail and prison. They want to get rid of them, get them off the streets, just get rid of them. I look at you as housing advocates, as people who are stone catchers, people who stand between the angry mobs throwing rocks, and you catch those stones until people who are sick are well enough to join us in that battle. And it's the stone catchers in our society who give me hope. My son has a mental illness. This awful disease wears his face. And I will be forever grateful to people such as you who can look beyond the madness in his eyes and see a person of worth, of value, who has a family, who loves him. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for what you do. Remember, you're not widget makers. Go out there and change the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. After hearing Peter, it's kind of difficult for me to invite you to complete lunch and remind you that there's a dessert reception to follow. Rather, I think we ought to remember some of his advice that we tend to count widgets, how many units we build, where they are, what town it's in, and not necessarily remember the face of a person. So let's see if we can't remember Peter's son and do best by him and provide the needed housing and, more importantly, the support services for the Peter sons here in New Jersey. Thank you very much.